As you know, I am the biggest shill of Rivals of Aether. I stream Workshop whenever I can, and I love just the entire Workshop meta and all of the characters and play styles and people in that community. However, I don't really touch Basecast, so I wasn't really interested in Rivals 2. That being said, I decided to give it a shot. Of course, the game is still in beta, so things I talk about in this video are subject to change, but I want to talk about why Rivals 2 is a great game, it just isn't for me. And of course, this isn't a comprehensive review, these are just my first impression after a few hours of playing Rivals 2. Let's start off with the elephant in the room, which is the changed gameplay. I am of the camp that believes Rivals 1 gameplay is better, however, I understand that that is just a subjective opinion. Rivals 2 adds shields and grabs, which I think is a neat change, but there's just something about it I don't like, and I think the thing that I don't like about it is it takes away from the uniqueness of Rivals. I feel like the lack of defensive play in Rivals 1 is what made it unique and set it apart from every single other platform fighter. I wouldn't go as far as to say adding shields and grabs makes Rivals 2 a Smash clone, because it does not. The game is still unique in its own right. But I do feel like Rivals 2 feels more like Smash Bros. Than Rivals 1. Again, this is entirely a matter of subjective opinion, and I totally understand why people would prefer Rivals 2 over Rivals 1. It's definitely more mechanically advanced, especially in its defensive play, so I do think that it's a great game, it's just not for me. Maybe it's because I just like mashing. The biggest thing that is emblematic of the change in game philosophy from Rivals 2 to Rivals 1, other than the shields and grabs, is the removal of Drifty Eye. I think that changes a lot of what made Rivals 1 special as well, and I prefer Rivals 1 with Drifty Eye. There are a lot of moments where I died and I said, oh, if only I had Drifty Eye, I would have been able to survive that. But I don't design the game, so it is totally up to the developers what they want to do with their game, and if they want to remove Drifty Eye, that's fine. It just creates a different meta and gameplay style, and I prefer the gameplay style of Rivals 1. Again, it's entirely a matter of subjective opinion. What bothers me more than the removal of Drifty Eye, however, is the changes to the wall jumping system. In Rivals 2, you can no longer wall jump after up special, unlike in Rivals 1, except if you're playing as Crag for some reason. Just gets special privileges, I guess. I get why they did this, it's because they added ledges to the game, but I do think that it messed up my gameplay a lot. It might just have to be something I have to get used to, but I vastly prefer the way that Rivals 1 lets you wall jump after up B. I think it provides a lot of variance in recovery and makes the recovery in Rivals 1 a lot of fun and a lot easier, in my opinion. Another thing I dislike is how parry and shields are mapped to two separate buttons. I think you either need to have one or the other, or do it like Smash Ultimate did and make it so you can perfect shield. Having the two options mapped to separate buttons makes it hard for me to move my finger to the shield to the parry button right in time for when I want to parry, so why wouldn't I just shield? The new additions to the platform fighter genre, the Get Up Special and the Ledge Special and the Grab Special, are okay, I guess, but I feel like they're situational at best and don't do enough to overcome the shortcomings that I feel Rivals 2's gameplay has in comparison to Rivals 1. They're fun, and they add a bit to the gameplay. I do think it's a lot of fun, but I'd rather just play Rivals 1 without any of those things, but with Drift BI and wall jumping after up special. A lot of my friends are fans of Rivals 2, so I want to make this extremely clear. If you enjoy Rivals 2's changes to the genre more, then that's all good for you. It's just a matter of my subjective opinion. I've been doing a lot of complaining, so you'd think I'd hate this game, right? But I actually don't. Overall, the game is fun. Like, I had fun playing Rivals 2. Even with all these things that the game changes that I think were for the worse, the game is still overall fun, and I can see myself playing a lot of it because of how fun it is. At its core, it's still a platform fighter, a genre which I really love, and it's still more balanced and better mechanically than Ultimate, so I do like the game a lot, and I can see myself playing it for a while. However, I would just imagine myself playing Rivals 1 that much more because of how much more fun I have playing that game. If Rivals 1 is a 10 out of 10, Rivals 2 is like an 8.5 out of 10. I have a lot of fun with it. It's a great game. It just doesn't click as much with me personally as Rivals 1 did in terms of gameplay. And who knows, maybe if I play more of Rivals 2, I'll like it more, but I'm not certain of that. And that brings me to my next topic, which is the character roster. I have a friend who says, oh, you just hate Rivals 2 because you're a workshop player, you just want to play Platform Fighter Mugen. And you know what? Yeah, they're right, I do. I will admit that the smaller roster of Rivals 2 makes it a lot easier to balance around than Workshop. And Lord knows that Workshop has plenty of overpowered characters that the TOs just refuse to ban for some reason, looking at you, Lucastar. But there's something about, like, the inherent jankness of having a bunch of different creators whose characters were not balanced around each other at all in one tournament like this. It's a lot more chaotic, and I like that. But again, that is just a subjective opinion. So yes, I would rather play Platform Fighter Mugen. Can you really blame me? If I'm given the choice between playing 9 characters and playing over 100, including Chara Undertale, which is me IRL, which one do you think I'd choose? Again, this is entirely a matter of subjective opinion, and I get why you would prefer the roster of Rivals 2 over Platform Fighter Mugen over here, but I just prefer my thing. And besides, calling Workshop as it is now Platform Fighter Mugen kind of discredits all the work that goes into creating characters, because yeah, there are a few sprite rips still lingering around, but a lot of the characters now are entirely animated by hand, and they're all of really high quality and fun to play. So if you don't like the overpowered sprite rips, just uninstall them and just play with the more high quality characters. Yeah, Workshop still has a bit of that Mugen vibe because it's a bunch of characters made by people not balancing around each other, and it's a bunch of fan-made characters. But I feel like characters in Mugen are a lot less high quality than in Workshop nowadays, and calling Workshop Platform Fighter Mugen is kind of insulting to the creators that put in such hard work in the characters. I call it Platform Fighter Mugen because I think that's funny, but I don't actually think it's Platform Fighter Mugen. I think it's its own sub-game in Rivals of Aether. A game with devs that are just as passionate as the devs who made the game itself. And even if Rivals 1 didn't have Workshop, I feel like I would rather play Rivals 1 base cast than Rivals 2. Again, that's just my subjective opinion on the gameplay, but I would just rather play Rivals 1. Let's talk about the roster that Rivals 2 does have, because it's alright. I mean, Ori was my base cast main in Rivals 1, so since he's not coming back, it's kind of a big blow to me because none of the other characters stick out as much as Ori did. But there's also no character that I absolutely hate playing, like I do characters like Eliana in Rivals 1. I think the main problem with Rivals 2's roster right now is just its size. 9 characters isn't enough for a fighting game, in my opinion, and it makes a lot of the characters you see samey. Like, I think I didn't even see a single Fleet or Maple for the few hours that I played. The roster's just too small, but on the good side, the devs have said that all future characters will be free, and I think that's amazing and quite a risk to take in terms of game development, but I think Rivals 2 kind of had to do it because of the size of its starting base roster. Honestly, it should be the industry standard, but because it isn't, good on the devs for doing this. Honestly, it just depends on how fast they can churn out characters at this point, because I think that if they're able to get a character out like every other month or every 3 months, then the game will last for a while. But if it takes longer than that, I'm worried the game will die out. Because, again, the problem with platform fighters other than Smash Bros. Is they lack the iconicity that Smash Bros. As a franchise has. So it honestly depends on how fast they can get out characters and how long they plan to keep supporting the game for. And I'm hopeful that they're planning to support it for a long time, but again, I can't help but be a bit worried. As for my personal favorite characters in the game, they were Clarin and, surprisingly, Loxodont. I don't normally like playing heavies, but there's something about Loxodont that just clicked for me. I think it's his axe and how, fun it is to swing around. But there's just something about Loxodont that makes him different than every other heavy in the genre. My least favorite character in the game, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say it, was Fleet. I just found their zoning playstyle to be unfun, and I didn't like it too much. A character that I surprisingly also disliked was Maple, because they changed the input for Tether from up B to A and B, and that's really hard to get used to. And I don't get why they changed it. But overall, it's a solid roster, and I do think that even the ones that aren't for me, like Maple and Fleet, will be great for other people. And as they add more characters that I liked, including characters like Lorena, or Olympia or Forsburn, I do think that the game will get a lot more fun with more characters. It just kinda sucks that the base roster's too small. The one thing that Rivals 2 does excel over Rivals 1, leaps and bounds, is the presentation. I do like the pixel art style of Rivals 1, especially when you get Workshop involved, and Workshop in general pushes the limits of presentation for Rivals of Aether, but there's just something about the switch to 3D that looks good for Rivals, and if we compare just basecast to basecast, I think that Rivals 2 does look a lot better than Rivals 1. There's kind of like a cartoony art style to it that just really looks nice. Another thing that I really liked about this game is its emphasis on the characters. The voice acting adds a lot to this, but just its emphasis on who these characters are make it better than Rivals 1, because Rivals 1's base cast felt like just characters to fight with, but Rivals 2's cast feels like actual characters with their voice acting and everything. There wasn't a single voice actor I hated in this game. And the victory animations add a lot to their characters as well, and I assume once we get a story mode, then I think that will also add a lot to these characters, and I like the emphasis put on these characters and making them actual characters. The music is about on par with Rivals 1. I kind of prefer Rivals 1's soundtrack more, but I haven't really gotten the chance to listen to Rivals 2 that much and soak it in as much as I have Rivals 1, so I'm gonna put them pretty much on par with each other. But yeah, overall, the character animations are fluid and add a lot of personality to these characters that were once just characters to fight with. And the change to 3D overall suits Rivals 2. And that's my review of Rivals 2. As much as I complained about it, overall, the game is a lot of fun. I enjoyed the game a lot. It's a game I could see myself pouring hundreds of hours into, and also going to locals and stuff to play. It's that much fun. Of course, I'll always be a workshop player at heart, and my heart will always belong to Rivals 1, and going into Rivals 2, I had a feeling that that wouldn't change. But despite all of its flaws, in my opinion, I was surprised at how much fun I did have with the game. And if you prefer Rivals 2 over Rivals 1, that's great. It's a completely different game in terms of how it plays, so I do think there's value in both. I just prefer one over the other, and that is my subjective opinion. You can like Rivals 2, but as for me, I'm gonna stick to what I'm used to.